When we picture the global economy, we usually imagine a pristine machine, clean algorithms, perfectly balanced spreadsheets, and rational math. But when you apply pressure, that clean math tends to shatter into something much messier. We tend to assume the rules of capitalism were drafted by scholars in quiet, wood-paneled universities, carefully weighing supply and demand. But the actual foundation of international trade was hammered out by furious, highly biased merchants shouting over each other to avoid bankruptcy. To understand how global trade operates today, we have to strip away the digital tickers and dig into the chaotic, hostile arguments that started the whole thing. Welcome to 17th century London. This is the real laboratory of early economics. It was a world of crowded docks, cargo ships, and cutthroat maritime trade. At the time, a massive technological shift was occurring. Cheap, unregulated printing presses were suddenly available, allowing anyone with a few coins and a grievance to publish their exact thoughts to the masses. This produced the primary weapon of the era, the tract. A tract is a short, cheaply printed pamphlet used to aggressively push a specific political or economic agenda. Think of them as the early modern equivalent of angry internet blog posts. They were completely unregulated, wildly biased, and printed on cheap paper meant to be read once and thrown in the fire. Because the very first arguments about inflation, tariffs, and monopolies were written on literal garbage, the initial records of global capitalism were incredibly close to rotting away completely. We fast forward to the 19th century. This was an era defined by scholars obsessed with taking the chaos of the past and categorizing it into neat, formal systems. Enter economist John Ramsay McCulloch. He found himself in a race against time to save these decaying, fragile documents before they turned to dust. McCulloch realized that to truly map out how a modern economy functions, he needed the raw data hidden inside those furious, contradictory merchant arguments from 2 centuries prior. So he set out to compile a definitive anthology, appropriately titled A Select Collection of Early English Tracts on Commerce. This visual represents the sheer scale of his data problem. McCulloch had to manually sift through thousands of isolated, heavily biased local pamphlets, funneling them down to extract the few universal economic truths hidden inside. McCulloch acted as a crucial bridge. By actively organizing these specific voices, he took the scattered, angry complaints of dock workers and merchants and forged them into a unified academic discipline. The physical process of making this anthology was meticulous. McCulloch selected, edited, and physically bound these incredibly disparate texts into a single volume. This chart shows the intellectual mechanics of his work. When you force two deeply conflicting, biased merchant arguments to sit side by side on the page, it demands a rigorous comparative analysis. This proximity acts as a filter. The highly personal, selfish bias of an individual trader cancels out against his rival, leaving behind only the clear underlying mathematical mechanics of how trade actually operates. This editorial method actively upgraded the data. Disposable, angry opinions were pressure-cooked into the bedrock science of macroeconomics. The resulting book served as an intellectual vault. It legitimized the messy origins of commerce, taking ideas intended to rot in the gutter and preserving them for history. But a physical vault has a critical flaw. For over a century, McCulloch's compiled anthology was trapped deep inside the rare bookrooms of elite university libraries. Only highly specialized scholars had the credentials to access these debates. The knowledge was safely preserved, but it was completely siloed away from the public. And that bottleneck finally broke with the mass digitization of historical texts by global platforms like Google Books. A delicate 19th century physical artifact is scanned and instantly rendered into universally accessible EPUBs and PDFs. An EPUB is simply a standard digital file format specifically designed to make text readable on any e-reader or mobile device. This process destroyed the old academic gatekeeping. It liberated centuries of economic data, placing it directly into the public domain. Looking directly at the Google Books interface, we can see the immediate utility. You have instant options to download the files and a search bar to scan the entire text. That search function allows a user to cross-reference overlapping economic theories in milliseconds. Finding a specific argument about tariffs used to take McCulloch months of manual reading. Now it takes a single keystroke. This represents the absolute democratization of historical data. The entire written history of early global trade can be summoned to a screen by anyone, anywhere on Earth for free. Reading through them, you realize these chaotic, highly opinionated early tracts are the exact ancestors of modern digital media, endless comment sections, and internet forums. Ultimately, economics is an ongoing, centuries-long argument, and today, thanks to the algorithm, the entire world finally has a seat at the table to listen.